What is up, fam? It is Shar, and welcome to Long Live in Color. I provide quick tips and experiences for law school process and legal field as a person of color. So it's been a minute, mainly because things sped up quite quickly the last time I have been on here and talked about my experience. It's been a minute for everything. It's been a minute for social media. It's been a minute for all of that. But I wanted to tell y'all some of what's happened and kind of like, I guess, give some advice based off of my experiences. Take it with a grain of salt because I haven't got anything for real back yet. So, yeah. So how Duke is set up is there is a fall break, which is not really a break because it's considered our writing week. And Duke is one of those well-known law schools that grade their writing course. So for that week, I was essentially writing a memo. The cool thing about that writing class for first semester is it stops after that memo. So my writing course stopped, and then I only had to do my 3 doctrinal classes. After a fall break, it was just focusing on those classes, doing some fun stuff in here and there. I've done some pro bono with expunctions and with the Clemency Project, so that's been great. And then things started to pick up more because finals were around the corner. So Thanksgiving was was the catalyst for all of this stress. That's when you hear about outlining and just the amount of studying that you hear about for law school and how time crunching it is. So that was a brief up to speed, but that's essentially what I've been doing for the past couple months, was finishing that memo and then diving in and studying for finals. So if y'all don't already know, most law schools, the way that they're set up is that you just get 1 grade for your doctrinal classes, and that's your final exam. So it's not at all similar to undergrad, in which you have all of these chances to boost your grades. Like you'll have quizzes, you'll have tests before your finals. For law school, it's not like that. I mean, you'll be lucky to get a midterm. I did have a midterm, but it was ungraded because my grade comes from my final. That is one thing about law school that I must say is very, very challenging and just frustrating, because it's like, you're expected so much. These grades are so important as far as like how you're going to transition into your summer and like where you're going to work for the summer. Your grades have a big push in that, a big factor in that, and you only get 1 chance at fall, and you don't really know what you're doing. You don't know until it's kind of like at the end, where it's like, oh, like you're doing all of this outlining and you're doing all of these things, and now it's just a matter of, oh, I need to perform, and I don't know how I'm going to perform and do great. So it's pretty frustrating. So when you first get to law school, they tell you, oh, don't worry about studying, don't worry about outlining. You know, you probably heard this word. If you haven't heard this word, don't be alarmed. They kind of underplayed that a little bit too much, in my opinion. I wish I knew a little bit more about what was going on and before everything started to crumble. So outlining is a study aid that you use for law school. Law schools are different in what they allow you to have on the exam. So my 3 exams, 2 of them were 8 hours long, and the other was 4.5. All 3 allowed me to use my notes, anything in like my case book, which is just another word for textbook, but it's case book just because it has all the cases that you read. And whatever other study I created, a flow chart, whatever, anything that's from me, I can use. And I can use it from my computer. I don't have to print it out or anything. So out of the 2 8-hour exams I took at home, I had a window to take them. And they were 8 hours. How long did it actually take me? The first one took me about 6 hours. And the second one took me about 7 hours. Around. So it's like 6 and 6.5, honestly. I didn't use the full 8-hour window. At a certain point, there's only so much you can like double check. Like your brain is so tired from the amount of studying you've done, the amount of preparing you've done. Like, yes, I went over it like 20 times, but like you got what you got, kind of thing. And then my last exam was not at home, it was at school. and that was 4.5 hours. I didn't use all 4.5, I used 4. That one specifically, you had to have an exam software to type it on, which was a little different. So if you had like a Google, like if your outline or your study aids were on a Google Drive, you would have to have downloaded on your computer. You couldn't have had it on the Google Drive. So that was like essentially my exam makeup. So what outlines are like I said, they're study tools. So what you do throughout the course of 1L, at least first semester, is you're reading thoroughly. You're doing these things called case briefing, which is you'll get assigned about 4 or 5 cases a class. You read them thoroughly, and you have it's set up kind of based on what your professor wants to see. But the way I had it was I had the facts, the issue, the procedural posture, which was like where the case was in the court at the time. Was it on appeal? Was it on a motion for some type of dismissal, anything like that? Then you had your rule that you took from the case, which is you're always getting a rule from it. That's what you're learning, is the rule. And the court's analysis and your analysis. So that was essentially like a case brief of mine. Sounds like a lot. It was a lot. How long did it take me to do homework? A lot. A really long time. So all of that you're doing, all of that diligent reading, and you go to class and you do all that diligent reading because you don't know if you're going to get cold called on. And these are all things that I've talked about in prior videos. But you're doing all of that diligent reading just in case of that. And also because you're going to have an exam on all of that. And so what you use to prepare for the exams, you create this outline. So it's like this big document, has a table of contents, and it's separated in a way that's similar to the professor's syllabus. And so as you see, as you're taking the course, you're seeing that everything kind of makes a bigger picture, and you separate that through the chapters or the units that you go through. And you use your notes to fill in, how it's separated, and then you have your outline. And the point of the outline is that you're relearning the material and better acquaint yourself with the material and apply it correctly. And then you, depending on your professor, if they allow you to use notes, you use that outline come exam time. What a lot of people do is they make an attack outline, which is like a smaller version of the actual outline. What that's supposed to do is supposed to help how you write out your response to a question. The questions on exams are dependent on the professor. One professor I had true false, but I had essays as well. All of them I had essays, but one specifically I had true false. It sounds simple enough, like okay, right? So you just know you have this outline to do. When do you start the outline? I started before Thanksgiving break. Still didn't have enough time, it felt like, because I was still finishing up when it was crunch time for exams, which is crazy because we only have 3 days apart before each exam to actually study. And no, we don't have classes, but it feels like this. It doesn't feel like enough time, especially when you hit that last one. When I hit that last day for my exam, it was like I had no brain power left. I was really scraping it. So the first thing I learned was that I should start outlining sooner. I wish I had understood the amount of time. I think what I really would have appreciated going into this year was having different perspectives on how people learn. I think a lot of people were saying, oh, Thanksgiving, or oh, do this, but it depends on the person. Like they would always say it depends on the person rather than giving like a concrete plan of what they did. What I would probably do is start well before the break. Actually outline my notes in a sense, have them already organized. But it's hard to say that now because when you start your 1L year, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to brief. You don't know how to do all this. So my notes from the very beginning were very rough compared to my notes at the end. And so I kind of had to decipher them and add to them, which was frustrating. But I know now not to do that because, of course, I have the skill set that I developed throughout the semester to know what to do next semester. So that is kind of something I couldn't help. It's just I wasn't going to know that. But I did wish I knew that outlining would take so much of my time. The second thing I wish I knew was the amount of energy exam time was going to take. Law school is very exhausting. I felt that in the first month. And so I did try to better allot my energy in the sense, try to be more efficient with how I did work. But I think I'd be even more efficient next semester, especially since I know what I'm doing more now. but it took so much energy out of me that by the time I got to exam time, I was exhausted and very, very much pushing myself mentally to just get the studying done when I didn't want to. Third thing I learned was that hypos are important. Just as outlining is important, doing hypotheticals and practice problems are just as, if not more important. And actually writing them out like you would on test day is important. Like not bullet pointing your answers, like actually writing out your answers. A fifth thing that I learned, get a study group. I mean, okay, it definitely, it was like those people on the panels when I first came to law school. Depends on the person. But it actually does. Some people work better by themselves, which is completely fine. What I understood this for myself from undergrad too. I used to do study groups in undergrad. And the main reason why is because what I learned about myself is that if I can help teach the material or explain the material to other people, then I have a good grasp of the material. I also learned that there might be some holes in my logic that someone else can fill in that I'm missing. The way we went about it is like, I talked to people, saw the people that I liked based off of their like responses in class or their engagement in class. They looked really engaged in class. Or like if I've spoken to them before and spoken to them about some of the materials in class, all of that I factored into who should be in my study group. I had a firm number that I didn't want to go over 5 people, just because the bigger, the more talking and the more distracted you can get. The fifth thing I wish I knew, I don't know if I'm on 5 or 6 at this point. Another thing I wish I knew is to constantly understand the material in the bigger scheme of things. So like after I get done with the unit, it was kind of like I just got done with it and moved on and didn't look back. When in reality, we should have consistently been reviewing it and tying it in to the pieces of the class as a whole and how it fits and where it fits in the class. I would have had just a better understanding going into finals time and not having to relearn so much. Another thing I learned is if you can afford to get an ebook and your professor's fine with you having an iPad, like I had a professor that didn't want technology, but she was fine with the iPad. If you're able to have an ebook, use the ebook. One thing that happened to me a lot during the semester is I would get a lot of back and neck pain. Some of it was stress, so I would get a lot of tension just because of the stress that I was accumulating up here. But then the backpack with like 3 big textbooks weren't helping. It was like creating more and more tension to the point where I strained my back in the middle of the semester. So if you are able to get an ebook and your professor's fine with you getting an ebook, please get one. Do not get these big, huge law textbooks if you do not have to. If your school provides a locker, utilize it. Keep your books in there if you need to. I got an iPad, which was like game changer. If you don't have an iPad, get an iPad. I stand fully by it. At first it was like, I have a monitor, I have a Mac, I should be fine. I don't need an iPad. That's just excessive. Despite half of my classes, 2 out of my classes don't even allow technology. And man, I got the iPad towards the end of the semester. That was the best decision of my life. I hated the fact I didn't get it sooner. I was like, and you can get like the 2021 for like $300, $200. So on Best Buy or Amazon. Another thing I learned, make time. I didn't have a problem making time for like my loved ones. I definitely did my best on that. But make time to go out and explore. I did not do that really at all. Like I've been in Durham since August and I can only name 5 restaurants I've been to. Keep your routines. My workout routine died this past semester. I was forcing myself to do morning rise yoga, which was 10 minutes, and that was killing me. So make sure you kind of keep those good habits up. It's so much easier said than done. But if you don't do it, just try to stick to something. Like if you don't hit all of the notches, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up about that like I did. But like my biggest thing was I am done by 8 p.m. If it's 8 p.m., I'm not doing any more work. I'm eating and I'm decompressing. I did that every day. I won't get my grades back until January. So I have no idea how I did. So I take all of this with a grain of salt. I'll come back and tell y'all how I did. And hopefully my advice still stands. But this is a process it's very easy to beat yourself up about when you're not perfect or at the top. It's very easy to get frustrated and stress out, especially if you're anything like me. But at the end, you wouldn't be here if they didn't think you couldn't be here. So I had to remind myself of that a lot. If you like this video, you want to see more like it, please like, comment, and subscribe. I hope y'all continue to enjoy what I have to provide and offer and the insight that I can give. As always, peace, guys.